The sky burned orange and red above the capital city. Ships from the Galactic Coalition dropped bombs that turned tall buildings into dust and fire. The ground shook every few seconds. Smoke rose everywhere, so thick that the twin suns of the planet could barely be seen. Captain stood on a hill outside the city walls. She watched the destruction through her helmet display. Her battalion of 200 human soldiers waited behind her, weapons ready, but they had no orders to fight. They were here only to watch, to make sure they died properly. There were predators. Everyone in the galaxy knew this. For 200 years they had conquered planet after planet. Their warriors stood 8 feet tall, covered in silver fur, with claws that could cut through metal and teeth that could crush bone. They showed no mercy to the species they defeated. Billions had died under rule. Now it was their turn to die. The Galactic Coalition had decided that they were too dangerous to exist. Extinction protocols were approved by all 12 member species. Every would be killed. Every city would be destroyed. Every trace of their civilization would be erased from the galaxy. Understood why. She had seen the images from conquests. She had read the reports of entire species wiped out for sport. There were monsters. But watching a civilization burn still made something twist in her stomach. "Captain," said Lieutenant, walking up beside her. He was young, only 25 years old, with a serious face that rarely smiled. "Coalition Command wants a status report." "Tell them the bombardment is proceeding as planned," said. "Military resistance has collapsed. Estimated time to complete extinction, 48 hours. Nodded and turned to send the message. Kept watching. In the distance she could see civilians running through the streets. Some carried children. Some fell and did not get up. Coalition drones hunted them with cold efficiency, their weapons firing again and again. "This is necessary," she told herself. "This is justice." But the words felt hollow. A sound reached her ears through the chaos. At first she thought it was the wind. Then she heard it again, clearer this time. It was coming from a collapsed building about 300 meters away, near the edge of the city. It sounded like crying. "Hold position," said. "I'm going to investigate something." "Captain, we have orders to stay outside the city limits." "I'll be quick." She moved before he could argue. Her boots crunched over broken stone and twisted metal as she approached the collapsed building. The crying grew louder. It was not the sound of adult. It was higher, softer, more desperate. Climbed over a pile of rubble and found a hole leading down into what looked like an underground bunker. The crying was coming from inside. She activated the light on her helmet and dropped down. The bunker had been a nursery. She could tell from the small beds lined against the walls, the toys scattered on the floor, the bright paintings of stars and moons on the ceiling. Most of the ceiling had collapsed, but one corner remained intact. In that corner, 7 small shapes huddled together. Cubs. They were tiny, the largest no bigger than a medium dog. Their silver fur was covered in ash and dust. Their eyes, which glowed amber in the darkness, were wide with terror. They pressed against each other, shaking, crying, making small sounds of fear. In front of them lay the body of an adult female. She had died protecting them, her body covering the entrance to their hiding spot when the ceiling fell. Her eyes were still open, staring at nothing. The cubs had been alone with her body for hours, maybe longer. Stood frozen. Her training told her what to do. Extinction protocols meant no survivors, no exceptions. These cubs would grow up to be warriors. Their claws would grow sharp. Their teeth would grow long. They would become the same monsters that had killed billions. She raised her weapon. The smallest cub looked at her. It was barely the size of a house cat, its fur lighter than the others, almost white. It stopped crying. It crawled forward away from its siblings towards Boot. And it mewled. It was the same sound a kitten made when it was hungry. The same sound a puppy made when it was scared. the same sound any baby made when it needed comfort. The cub pressed its small body against her boot and looked up at her with eyes full of fear and hope and desperate, innocent trust. His finger stayed on the trigger, one shot. That was all it would take, then she could finish the others, quick, clean, according to orders. But her finger would not move. She thought of her little sister back on Earth. She thought of her niece, who was 5 years old and loved to draw pictures of spaceships. She thought of every child she had ever known. Monsters were not born, monsters were made. These cubs had made no choices, they had conquered nothing, they had killed no one, they were guilty only of being born. Was that enough to condemn them? The sound of footsteps made her turn, appeared at the entrance to the bunker, his weapon raised. "Captain, I told you to," he stopped when he saw the cubs. His face went pale. "Oh no." "Lieutenant," said slowly, "what do you see?" Was silent for a long moment. He looked at the cubs. He looked at the dead caretaker. He looked at the smallest cub still pressed against his boot. "I see children, Captain," he finally said. His voice was barely a whisper. "I see scared children." "So do I." She lowered her weapon. "Captain, we have orders. Coalition command said no survivors. If anyone finds out, Then we make sure no one finds out." Knelt down and gently picked up the smallest cub. It weighed almost nothing. It trembled in her arms for a moment, then slowly relaxed. A tiny sound came from its throat, almost like a purr. "Help me with the others." Stared at her. She could see the war in his eyes, duty against conscience, orders against humanity. "This is treason," he said. "Yes." "We could be executed." "Yes." "The killed millions of innocent people." These cubs did not. Closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed in his face. He walked forward and knelt beside the remaining cubs. They shrank away from him at first, but he waited, patient, until the largest one sniffed his hand and allowed him to pick it up. "How do we get them out?" he asked. Smiled for the first time in days. "Cargo Bay 7 on the horizon. No one checks there. We move at nightfall." Above them, the bombardment continued. The civilization died in fire and ash. But in the darkness of a collapsed nursery, 7 small lives were given a second chance. And Captain made the choice that would change the galaxy forever. The S-horizon moved silently through space, leaving the burning behind. Inside Cargo Bay 7, hidden behind stacks of supply crates, 7 small cubs slept in a nest made of old blankets and spare uniforms. Watched them sleep. 3 days had passed since she had pulled them from the ruins. 3 days of hiding, of lying, of pretending everything was normal while her heart raced every time someone walked past the cargo bay. The smallest cub, the one with the almost white fur, had attached herself to completely. She followed everywhere she could, made small crying sounds when left, and slept only when curled against his chest. The crew had started calling her, which meant spring in the old Korean language. Thought it was a good name. This tiny creature had survived the winter of her world. She deserved a name that meant hope. The other cubs were slowly adjusting. The largest one, a male with dark silver fur, had taken on the role of protector. He stayed awake when the others slept, watching the entrance to their hiding spot with alert amber eyes. Had named him after his own brother who had died in the war. Sergeant had joined their secret. She was the ship's medic, a quiet woman with gentle hands and kind eyes. She had discovered the cubs by accident when she went looking for medical supplies in the cargo bay, had expected her to report them immediately. Instead had said, "They must be hungry, let me see what I can make for them." Within hours, she had created a special food mixture that the cubs could eat safely. She checked on them every day, treating small cuts and making sure they stayed healthy. When developed a cough, stayed up all night mixing medicines until the cub was better. "Why are you helping us?" asked her one night. Was feeding the cubs, letting them eat from her hands. My grandmother was a child during the Third Pacific War, she said. Her whole family was killed. She survived only because a soldier from the enemy side hid her in his truck and smuggled her to safety. He could have been executed for it. He did it anyway. What happened to him? He was caught. They shot him. His voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. My grandmother named her first son after him. She never forgot. She taught all of us that mercy is never wrong, even when it costs everything. Did not know what to say. She simply nodded and helped feed the cubs. But their secret could not last forever. On the fourth day, the call came that had been dreading. "Captain, you have an incoming transmission," said the communication officer. "Priority 1, from Admiral of the Dominion." His blood went cold. Was the commander of the coalition fleet. He was a species that looked like tall insects with 4 arms and 4 eyes. They were known for their hatred of the 20 years ago, raiders had attacked a colony and killed over 2 million civilians, including 3 of his own sisters. "Put him through," said, keeping her voice calm. The holographic display flickered. An admiral appeared on the bridge. He was terrifying to look at, his black shell gleaming under the lights, his 4 eyes fixed on with cold intensity. "Captain," he said, his voice was like metal scraping against stone, "I have received a very interesting report." "Admiral." 3 days ago, a security drone detected unusual heat signatures in cargo bay 7 of your vessel. The signatures were consistent with life forms, small ones. Felt every eye on the bridge turn to her. She did not look away from. "I want to speak with you directly," continued. "Alone, disable your recording systems." "That is against protocol, Admiral." "So is harboring extinction-class specimens." His 4 eyes narrowed. "I am giving you one chance, Captain. One chance to explain before I report this to Coalition Command." Hesitated. Then she nodded to her crew. They left the bridge one by one until only she remained. "Recording systems disabled," she said. Leaned forward. "You have cubs on your ship, do not lie to me. I have seen the drone footage." There was no point in denying it. "Yes." "Why?" "Because they are children." "They are." "They are children," repeated. "They have committed no crimes. They have hurt no one. They are guilty only of being born into a species we have decided to destroy." Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was harder than before. "They killed my sisters," he said. "They killed them slowly. They made them suffer. They laughed while they did it. I received recordings. They sent them to all worlds as a warning. I am sorry for your loss, Admiral, truly, but those cubs did not kill your sisters. They would have. Given time, they would have grown into warriors. They would have killed other sisters, other daughters, other children. That is what do. That is what we're taught to do. But what if they were taught something different? What if they were raised with kindness instead of cruelty? What if they were given a chance to become something other than monsters?" Laughed. It was an ugly sound. "You humans, always believing you can change things, always thinking your mercy makes you strong." He shook his head. "It makes you weak, and it will destroy you." "Maybe," said, "but I would rather be destroyed for showing mercy than survive by killing children." The Admiral stared at her for a long time. Then his expression changed. It became colder, harder, more dangerous. "I am transmitting my report to Coalition Command," he said. "I am recommending immediate action. You will be stripped of your rank. Your ship will be boarded. The specimens will be destroyed. And you, Captain, will be executed for treason." "Admiral, please." "This conversation is over." The hologram disappeared. Stood alone on the bridge, her heart pounding. She had known this moment would come. She had known from the beginning that her choice would have consequences. She walked to the communication panel and opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, this is the captain. Report to stations immediately. We have a situation." Then she went to cargo bay 7. The cubs were awake, playing with each other, saw and ran to her, climbing up her leg to nestle in her arms. The tiny cub made her purring sound, happy and safe, and completely unaware that 47 warships would soon be turning their weapons toward this ship. Held her close. "I will protect you," she whispered. "Whatever it takes, I will protect you." Outside the window, the stars gleamed cold and distant, and somewhere in the darkness, the Coalition fleet was already moving. 47 warships surrounded the horizon. They came from every species in the Coalition, destroyers with their sharp angular designs, cruisers that looked like giant insects made of metal, dreadnoughts, massive and slow but carrying enough weapons to destroy a moon. Smaller vessels from a dozen other species filled the gaps between them. The horizon was alone, one ship, 200 crew, 7 cubs. On the bridge, watched the tactical display with calm eyes. Her crew worked around her in tense silence. Stood at his station, his face pale but his hands steady on the controls. Was in Cargo Bay 7, staying with the cubs. "Captain," said the weapons officer, "Coalition vessels are charging their main batteries. They will be ready to fire in approximately 4 minutes. "Understood." "Captain, what do we do?" Did not answer immediately. She looked around the bridge at her crew. They were young, most of them. They had families back on Earth. They had dreams and hopes and plans for the future. They had followed her into this situation because they trusted her. She owed them the truth. "Listen to me," she said, her voice carrying across the bridge. "In 4 minutes those ships will fire on us. We cannot fight them. We cannot outrun them. We will die." No one spoke. No one moved. "I brought us here," continued. "I made the choice to save those cubs. I take full responsibility. If anyone wants to leave, to take an escape pod and surrender to the Coalition, I will not stop you. I will not judge you. You would be making the smart choice." Still no one moved. Was the first to speak. "Captain, with respect, I did not join the fleet to make smart choices. I joined to make right choices. I am staying." "So am I," said the weapons officer. "And me," said the navigator. One by one, every person on the bridge spoke. Every single one of them chose to stay. Felt tears building behind her eyes, but she did not let them fall. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you all." Captain said, "We have 3 minutes. Is there anything we can do?" Thought fighting was impossible. Running was impossible. Surrender meant death for the cubs and likely for her crew as well. There was only one option left. Talking. "Open a broadcast channel," she said. "All frequencies, every ship, every station, everyone who can hear us." The communication officer looked at her with wide eyes. "Captain, that will reach hundreds of vessels, civilian ships, news stations, everyone in the sector." "I know, do it." He did. Took a deep breath. She thought of sleeping in the cargo bay, trusting that the world was safe. She thought of standing guard over his siblings, trying to be brave. She thought of all the children throughout history who had died because adults could not find another way. Then she spoke. "This is Captain of the Earth vessel Horizon. I am broadcasting to every ship, every station, every being who can hear my voice. What I have to say will only take a few minutes, but I believe it matters more than anything I have ever said before." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 3 days ago, I found 7 cubs in the ruins of there. They were hiding in a collapsed nursery, huddled around the body of their dead caretaker. They were crying. They were scared. They were alone. The Empire committed terrible crimes. I know this. Everyone knows this. Billions of innocent beings died because of cruelty. There is no excuse for what they did. There is no forgiveness that can erase that suffering. But these cubs did none of those things. The oldest of them is barely 3 years old. They have never hurt anyone. They have never made a choice about who to be or what to do. They are guilty only of being born. She could feel the silence across the fleet. Everyone was listening. In a few minutes, the coalition will fire on my ship. They will kill my crew. They will kill me. And they will kill 7 children whose only crime was crying for help when they were afraid. I am not asking for myself. I made my choice. I knew the consequences, but I am asking for them. I am asking every being who can hear me to think about what we are doing here today. They taught their children to hate. They taught them to kill. They taught them that other species were prey, nothing more. And look what that teaching created. Look at the galaxy that hatred built. But what if we taught these cubs something different? What if we showed them kindness instead of cruelty? What if we raised them to see other species as friends, not food? Would they become monsters? Or would they become proof that nothing is born evil, that anyone can change, that the cycle of hate can be broken? We will never know if they die today. Walked to the main display and transmitted an image. It was a video from Cargo Bay 7, recorded earlier that day, was playing with a toy that had made for her. She was chasing it across the floor, pouncing on it, making small happy sounds. She looked like any other baby animal, any other child, full of life and joy and innocent wonder. Her name is, said. It means spring. I named her that because she survived the winter of her world, because I believed she deserved to see what comes after winter, what comes after destruction and death and hate. Look at her and tell me she deserves to die. I am asking the galaxy to choose, not to choose between and coalition, not to choose between vengeance and forgiveness. I am asking you to choose who you want to be. Do you want to be the species that killed children because of what their parents did? Do you want to be the civilization that could look at crying bobbies and see only enemies? Do you want to be the generation that taught the next generation that mercy is weakness? Or do you want to be something better? Humanity almost destroyed itself once. Our history is full of the same cruelty that the showed. We burned cities. We killed millions. We taught our children to hate people who looked different or spoke different languages or believed different things. But we learned, slowly, painfully. We learned that the cycle of hate only creates more hate. We learned that vengeance feels good but builds nothing. We learned that the true measure of a civilization is not how efficiently it destroys its enemies, but how it treats those who cannot fight back. Today, I am asking the galaxy to learn with us. Fire on my ship if you must. I will not run. I will not beg. But before you fire, look at that image. Look at, and ask yourself if you can live with what you are about to do. This is Captain of the S Horizon. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that I do not regret my choice. Some things are worth dying for, and some things are worth more than survival. She ended the transmission. The bridge was silent. Everyone stared at the tactical display, watching the 47 warships, waiting for the first shots to fire. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 3. Nothing happened. Captain said slowly, his voice filled with disbelief, "The coalition ships are. They are holding fire." Looked at the display. He was right. The weapons that had been charging were now powering down. The ships that had been moving into attack formation were now holding position. The galaxy had heard her. And for one precious moment, the battlefield was silent. The silence lasted for exactly 90 seconds. Had allowed herself to hope. For 90 beautiful seconds, she believed that her words had changed something, that the galaxy had listened, that mercy had won. Then Admiral's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Enough of this foolishness. On the tactical display, 3 destroyers broke formation. Their weapons powered up again, glowing bright red on the sensors. They moved toward the horizon with deadly purpose. All coalition vessels, this is Admiral. I am assuming direct command. The human captain has attempted to manipulate us with emotion and propaganda. We will not be manipulated. Extinction protocols will be completed. Fire on my command. Hope shattered. She looked at her crew. They looked back at her with fear in their eyes, but also with something else. Pride, acceptance. They had chosen to stand for something, and they were ready to face the consequences. "It was a good speech, Captain," said quietly. "I meant every word." "I know." The three destroyers opened fire. The horizon shook as the first energy bolt struck its shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. The shield indicator dropped from 100% to 70, then to 50. "Shields failing," the tactical officer reported. "We cannot take another volley." Closed her eyes. She thought of her family on Earth. She thought of all the things she would never see and never do. Then she heard something impossible. "Captain," shouted, "another ship is moving into position between us and the—" Opened her eyes. On the tactical display, a large cruiser was accelerating toward the battle. It placed itself directly between the horizon and the attacking destroyers, its own shields absorbing the next volley of fire. It was a ship, the Valiant Sun. "This is captain of the vessel Valiant Sun," a clicking, buzzing voice announced over the communication channel. "We are assuming defensive position around the human vessel. Admiral, you will stand down." His response was immediate and furious. "Captain, you are committing treason. Stand aside or you will be destroyed alongside the humans." "Then destroy us." A second ship moved to join the Valiant Sun. Then a third. Then a fourth. On the tactical display, watched in disbelief as vessel after vessel broke from the coalition formation and moved to protect the horizon. A dreadnought, 2 frigates, a medical ship from the Pale Worlds, a cargo hauler that had no weapons at all but put itself in the line of fire anyway. 17 ships, 17 captains who had heard words and made their choice. Was reading the incoming transmissions, his voice cracking with emotion. "Captain, they are sending messages, all of them. They want you to hear." The first transmission was from Captain of the 3,000 years ago, my people were hive vermin. We lived in tunnels. We ate garbage. The galaxy hunted us for sport. Then the Pale Ones found us. They could have exterminated us. Instead, they taught us. They raised us. They showed us that we could be more than what we were born to be. I am standing here today because someone showed mercy to my ancestors. I will not dishonor their memory by denying that same mercy to others. The second transmission came from the dreadnought. "I am commander of the breath of ancestors that have no debt to the humans. We have no alliance with them. We have no reason to die for 7 cubs, but my grandmother taught me that some things matter more than reason. Some things matter more than survival. Honor, justice, mercy. These are not words, they are choices. Today I choose mercy." More messages followed. A captain spoke of refugees his people had once sheltered. A medical officer talked about the oath she had sworn to protect all life, regardless of species. A cargo hauler captain simply said, "Those cubs are Bobbies. What kind of person kills Bobbies?" Admiral watched his fleet fracture in front of him. His voice grew colder with each defection. "You are all traitors," he said. "You are all fools. They will not thank you for this. Those cubs will grow up and kill your children and they will remember nothing of your mercy. They will show you none in return." Responded before anyone else could. "Maybe, Admiral, maybe you are right. Maybe these cubs will grow up and become exactly what you fear. Maybe our mercy will be repaid with cruelty." "Then why take the risk?" "Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is becoming exactly what we hate. The alternative is teaching every species in this galaxy that kindness is foolish, that mercy is weakness, that the only way to survive is to kill anyone who might someday be a threat. If we do that, Admiral, we do not deserve to survive. If we cannot look at crying children and see children, if we cannot imagine a future different from the past, if we cannot believe that anyone can change, then we have already lost. We will have become monsters ourselves." Was silent for a long moment. "You are a fool, Captain," he finally said, "but you are a brave fool." "I would rather be a brave fool than a wise coward." Another long silence. Then slowly, The three destroyers powered down their weapons. They did not join the protective formation, but they did not fire either. They simply held position, waiting. "I will not fire on children," said. His voice was different now, tired, old, full of something that might have been grief. "My sisters would not have wanted that. They were cruel, the who killed them, but my sisters were kind. They would have hated what I was about to do. I am withdrawing my ships. The coalition will debate this matter. I make no promises about the outcome, but for today, for this moment, the cubs will live." The destroyers turned and flew away. On the bridge of the horizon, no one moved. No one spoke. They simply stood there, surrounded by 17 ships that had risked everything to protect 7 small lives. Felt tears running down her face. She did not try to stop them. "Captain said, 'You did it. You actually did it.'" "We did it," she said. "All of us. Everyone who listened. Everyone who chose." She opened a channel to Cargo Bay 7. "How are the cubs?" His voice came back, thick with emotion. "They are fine. Captain is sleeping. She has no idea what just happened." "Good, let her sleep. Let them all sleep. They have a long life ahead of them." She looked out the window at the ships surrounding them. An and human, all standing together, all protecting the same fragile lives. The galaxy had fractured today. The old coalition, built on convenience and mutual fear, had cracked down the middle. But something new had begun. Something built not on fear but on hope, not on hatred but on mercy. Did not know what would come next. She did not know if the cubs would prove her right or prove right. She did not know if her choice would save the galaxy or doom it. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever happened, she had made the right choice. And that was enough. 20 years had passed since the day the galaxy fractured. The planet called Nu orbited a gentle yellow star in a quiet corner of the galaxy. It was a small world, mostly covered in forests and grasslands, with 2 small oceans and weather that rarely grew harsh. The Galactic Union had granted it to the refugees as a new home, a place to begin again. Stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the largest settlement on the planet. Behind her rose a simple stone monument carved with the names of everyone who had died when the burned. In front of her spread a city of 50,000 people and other species living together in peace. She was no longer a cub. 20 years had transformed her from a tiny ball of white fur into a tall, graceful female. Her fur had darkened to a soft gray. Her claws were sharp enough to cut steel, but she kept them trimmed short. Her eyes still glowed amber, but they held warmth now instead of the cold predator fire of her ancestors. She worked as studying the unique ecosystems of Nu and helping other species understand biology. She had published papers in scientific journals. She had friends from a dozen different worlds. She had a life that her ancestors could never have imagined. Today was a special day. Today, someone very important was coming to visit. The shuttle landed at noon. Watched it descend through the atmosphere, her heart beating faster with each passing second. The hatch opened, and a small group of people emerged. Leading them was an old woman with white hair and a face lined by time and worry and joy. She walked slowly, leaning on a cane, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. Captain, no, Admiral now, though she had retired from the fleet 5 years ago. Ran to her. She did not care that dignitaries were watching. She did not care about protocol or dignity or the way we're supposed to behave. She ran like she was a cub again, like she was that tiny ball of white fur that had crawled to boot in a burning nursery and begged for help. She stopped in front of and knelt. This was the deepest form of respect. It was a gesture reserved for those who had given life, for parents and protectors and saviors. "You came," said. Her voice was a soft rumble, lower than a human voice but warm with emotion. Reached down and placed her weathered hand on his head, just as she had done 20 years ago, just as she had done so many times in the years between. "Of course I came," said. "I would not miss this for anything." Today was the 20th anniversary of the day the galaxy chose mercy. Every year, New held a celebration to mark the occasion. But this year was special. This year, all 7 of the original Cubs had returned to stand together for the first time since they had grown up and scattered across the stars. Led through the city, everywhere they went people stopped to stare and whisper, the human who had saved the woman whose voice had silenced a battlefield. She was a legend now. Children learned about her in schools. Adults spoke her name with reverence. But too, she was simply the woman who had picked her up when she was afraid, the woman who had given her a name that meant spring, the woman who had believed in her before she knew how to believe in herself. They reached the central plaza where a large crowd had gathered. On a stage at the front stood 6 siblings, all grown now, all transformed by the years. Was the largest, his dark silver fur now streaked with gray. He wore the uniform of the Galactic Union peacekeeping fleet. He was the first ever to serve in the fleet, and he had spent 20 years proving that his species could protect instead of destroy. Beside him stood, who had become a diplomat. She had spent years traveling between worlds, building relationships, showing other species that could be trusted. She had negotiated 3 peace treaties and prevented 2 wars. Next was Minyu, an artist whose paintings hung in galleries across the galaxy. His work showed the beauty of different worlds and species, celebrating diversity instead of fearing it. Then came a doctor who specialized in. She had developed treatments that saved lives across 6 different species. She worked in the colonies, treating patients who could not pay, asking for nothing in return. Was an engineer who designed spacecraft. Her ships were used by rescue services throughout the Union, fast and reliable vessels that had saved thousands of lives. And finally there was Juno, the youngest after. He was a teacher now, working with young to help them understand their history and their potential. He taught them that they did not have to become what their ancestors had been. He taught them that they could choose their own path. Climbed onto the stage and stood with her siblings. Together, the 7 of them represented everything that had hoped for on that terrible day 20 years ago. They were living proof that monsters were not born, they were made. They were living proof that anyone could change, that any cycle could be broken, that the future did not have to repeat the past. Was guided to a seat of honor at the front of the crowd. She sat down slowly, her old bones aching, but her eyes bright with happiness. Stepped forward to speak. 20 years ago, she said, my siblings and I were alone in the ruins of our world. We were cubs, too young to understand what was happening, too small to survive on our own. The galaxy had decided that we should die, that we were too dangerous to live, that our species had done terrible things and we should be punished for crimes we did not commit. But one human disagreed. Captain found us in a collapsed nursery. She could have followed her orders. She could have killed us and no one would have blamed her. The had earned no mercy. We deserved nothing. But she picked me up. She held me against her chest. She said words I could not understand, but I understood her meaning. She was telling me that I was safe, that someone cared, that I mattered. That moment changed everything, not just for me and my siblings, but for the entire galaxy. Looked at her siblings, then at the crowd, then at. My people tell stories now, she said. In every school, in every home, we tell the story of the human whose voice silenced a battlefield. We teach our children that mercy is not weakness. We teach them that the true measure of strength is not how many enemies you can destroy, but how many lives you can save. We teach them to be better than our ancestors, to build instead of destroy, to protect instead of conquer, to love instead of hate. And we teach them that this transformation was only possible because one human believed in us before we knew how to believe in ourselves. Descended from the stage and walked too. She knelt again, and this time all 6 of her siblings joined her. 7, kneeling before one old human woman. You gave us life, said, not just survival, not just existence. You gave us the chance to become who we were meant to be. You showed us that our future did not have to be determined by our past. You taught us the meaning of hope. She looked up with eyes full of love. Thank you for everything, for believing in us, for fighting for us, for being our spring when everything else was winter. His eyes were wet with tears. She reached out and touched face, then each of the others in turn. I made a choice 20 years ago, she said, her voice soft but clear. I chose to see children instead of enemies. I chose to believe that anyone could change. I chose hope over fear. But you are the ones who made that choice meaningful. You are the ones who took the chance I gave you and built something beautiful with it. You are the ones who proved that mercy is never wasted, that kindness always matters, that love is stronger than hate. She smiled, and despite her wrinkles and white hair, she looked young again for just a moment. I did not save you, she said. I just gave you a chance. You saved yourselves, you saved each other, and in doing so you helped save the galaxy. That is your legacy. That is what you have built, and I am so proud of all of you. Stood and embraced her. For a long moment they held each other while the crowd watched in silence. Then slowly someone started clapping. Others joined in. Soon the entire plaza was filled with applause from humans and dozens of other species, all celebrating the same thing. Hope. The sun was setting over New, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Stood at the cliff overlooking the city, watching the lights come on in windows and streets below. What happens now? Asked. Smiled. Now you keep going, you keep teaching, you keep building, you show the galaxy what it can become. And you? I am old, my time is ending, but yours is just beginning. You have centuries ahead of you, centuries to shape the future, to raise children, to tell stories, to make choices. She took his hand in her own. Make sure they never forget, she said. That is all any of us can do. Make sure they remember what mercy means. Make sure they understand that kindness is not weakness. Make sure they know that the measure of a civilization is not its power but its compassion. I will, promised. I will tell your story to my children, and they will tell it to theirs, and it will never be forgotten. Not my story, said. Our story. The story of the day the galaxy remembered its soul. She squeezed his hand, and together they watched the stars appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, 17 species who had once stood together continued to build a better future. Somewhere out there, children of every species learned that mercy was stronger than hate. Somewhere out there, the seeds planted 20 years ago were growing into forests. And on a small planet called New, an old human and a young stood side by side, watching the night fill with light. The story was not over. It would never be over. Every generation would have to make the same choice, again and again, forever. But as long as there were people willing to choose mercy, willing to believe in second chances, willing to look at crying children and see children instead of enemies, there was hope. And hope was enough. It always had been. It always would be.